Hey everyone, Jawad here with Hit the Apex podcast. How is everyone doing? It's been a while. Yes, it has been a while. I missed a race a couple of weeks ago, French Grand Prix. Had pretty good excuse this time, actually. For those who weren't following on Twitter, had the unfortunate passing of my partner's father a couple of weeks ago now. I can't believe it's been a couple of weeks. So it's been a bit of a difficult time for us, and just trying to spend as much time with each other and as with family as possible. And yeah, the French Grand Prix weekend was just a write-off for me. I didn't really care what happened or what was going on as much. So even though it was a bit of a hard one for Ferrari and for Charles Leclerc, but yeah, it's been tough the last couple of weeks, but it was good to come back home and get on to watch the Hungarian Grand Prix as a bit of a distraction, and then lots of silly season news kicking off as well over the past week too. So it's in full swing, definitely, as we head into the mid-season break. But at the same time, I just still feel a bit detached from all the happenings in F1 and racing at the moment. I can't really bring myself to write anything. I'd love to do something, do a piece on Sebastian Vettel as well, and about his retirement and what we're going to remember him for after he leaves at the end of this year. And all the things going on with Alpine and Oscar Piastri. There's a lot going on, but just letting you guys know that my mindset and my mentally and feelings emotionally, it's not all there with it. But I still wanted to record today. It's the last chance, obviously, heading into the mid-season break, and talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix, what happened in Budapest. Had Supercars as well with the Bend SuperSprint over the weekend. And yeah, let's get into it. So, emphatic drive from Max Verstappen. He qualified 10th and sealed his 8th win of the season. And again, another race of Ferrari errors. This time it wasn't a driver error like in Le Castellet. It was a team strategic error. We see Max with an 80-point lead now in the Drivers' Championship. Leclerc, got to say, he lost a likely win. It could have easily been that, given the pace that they had on the medium tyre in the middle of the race, but they made the switch to the hard tyre for the third stint, after the second stop, and it was just, everyone was like, what are you doing? More on that later anyway. We go back to qualifying. George Russell getting his first pole position for Mercedes, his first career pole as well. And that was a lap that just came out of nowhere at the end of Q3. So good on George. He led the early stages of the race on the soft tyre. Ferraris, they both started on the medium tyre, led by Carlos Sainz. We had threats of rain persisting, but nothing eventuated in that instance. But it was an intriguing race overall of strategy. It was nice to follow the different strategies people were on. So everyone who started on the soft tyre, you knew that they were going to two-stop this race. Those who started on the mediums, it was like, oh yeah, could do a one-stop. You go far enough, you can put on the hard tyre. But the hard tyre was the compound that gave little performance. And that was the thing for the medium tyre runners at the start. If you want a two-stop, then it's best to run a longer second stint or first stint, whichever stint you can get a bit of longevity out of. That way you can go onto the soft tyre towards the end of the race, which we saw the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz do. So anywhere between that lap 48 or 52 out of 70 would have been the ideal time to stop to put on the soft tyre. Ferraris, they were quick on the medium tyres, even against Russell on the soft tyre. And then you had Max from 10th coming through the field on the soft tyre as well. The ideal strategy for Ferrari would have been to have that longer middle stint and to be able to get the soft tyre on in the end. And, I mean, it's all in hindsight now. You can say if they did that with Leclerc, then it could have been an easy 25 points, 26 points with the fastest lap. Leclerc was mighty in that middle stint, as I said, with a medium tyre. He passed George for the lead on lap 31, all before Max came in on lap 39. This is kind of what triggered this oddball from Ferrari, was that Max came in on lap 39. He had caught up to the leaders, and basically Ferrari saw that as an undercut attempt. Max had another set of mediums he could go on to, whereas Ferrari, the only way they could respond to that undercut was to put Leclerc on the hard tyres. Now, big question mark around why they didn't do it with Sainz instead of Leclerc. Go for... I mean, many people believe that Sainz is not the championship favourite, etc. So take the risk with him rather than with your lead driver, because you need to get every point you can. That wasn't the case, so lap 40 obviously still far away from that soft tyre window, and because they had only run the medium tyre so far in the race twice, you have to use two different compounds, otherwise you will be disqualified or black flagged, either. Same thing, pretty much. So with the offset in Max's favour, he wasted no time passing the Ferraris, had his own little 360 spin as well at the penultimate corner, which kind of highlighted, people kind of highlighted that and how dominant Max has been this season, how ruthless he has been as well. And to be honest, it kind of, when thinking about things to say about Sebastian Vettel and when he was at his peak, going back to the Red Bull days, Verstappen in a way reminds me of a ruthless Vettel in those days. So the way he's been driving this season has been so metronomic, and just, again, using the term ruthless is probably the best thing to say in that instance. So he had that spin, saved the car, and he was away and, finished down the road, another win in the bag. 80 points in the championship is such a lead. Again, that's a Vettel kind of lead back in the Red Bull days when he was winning championships 4 years in a row. Behind those guys, Sainz and Hamilton, who had qualified in 7th, were out the front on the medium tyre as well, but they pitted and they were in the window for the soft tyre, so then they basically were able to have a little race at the end. But the Mercedes cars ended up being quicker at the end on the soft tyres, so we saw Hamilton come through, take second, and then George Russell had the pace to finish third ahead of Ferrari. So Ferrari at the end had no cars on the podium, 4th and 6th it was, and even though they pitted Leclerc a third time as well, and to put on the soft tyre, he still couldn't even set the fastest lap on those soft tyres, so didn't get the extra point, and we had Sergio Perez splitting them in 5th as well. So horrible day for Ferrari. Even though they got cars to the checkered flag, scored points, it's not what they would have wanted. And, those who've heard me before go on about this, it's no point saying the same thing over and over again, as much as it would be easy, but they just don't have the wit about them, that operational sharpness to be able to go for the jugular and go for maximum points to win this championship. That's the only way it's going to happen. Of course, there's a lot of question marks over them now, and questions being asked about Mattia Binotto's leadership. I'm not going to say much. Then I still think, who else is out there that could do better than him is where I stand now, rather than, I still think he's the right person for the job. I don't think there's anyone else out there, certainly in Ferrari, that I think would be any better than he is. So it's up to the whole team to start making better decisions in the pit wall, especially with their strategy calls and whatnot. On the other hand, you've got to praise Red Bull for their efforts and their strategist as well for coming up with the strategy for Max to get him to win the race. Like from 10th, it's unheard of a win in Hungary, of all places, where overtaking is very limited. Like, mind you, we saw quite a bit of overtaking this time, given that the cars follow each other a lot better, and that made for an entertaining race. But again, I think, what was it, Jenson Button, his first win in F1, or his first win here at Hungary, he started like outside the top 10 even. I can't remember exactly where he started, so Max didn't quite get the chocolates for that one, but still, it was, you can't really say anything bad about Max at the moment. He's doing so well, and it's his championship to lose basically in this instance. That's going back to Ferrari and the hard tyres. Like, how could you not see, after both Alpines made the switch to the hard tyre earlier in the race, they were going for a one-stop race, and how bad their pace was. And even Kevin Magnussen, closer to Ferrari with the Haas alliance, Magnussen having front-wing damage early in the race, he had to come in early and basically just save his race. They thought he could one-stop and take the hard tyres to the end, but he had no pace at all. He finished 16th. And then the Alpines, I honestly thought they would beat McLaren this time, but Lando Norris played his cards right, even had a slow pit stop, yet that's how bad the hard tyres were, that both Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon finished 8th and 9th behind Lando in the McLaren. So, how could you not see that? Like, not even like having all the information available, the data, but just being able to see in the data that's available that, the hard tyre is not going to be a good tyre at all in these conditions. So, that's not the sort of decision making that a world championship winning caliber team, a modern world championship winning caliber team, because, the last time Ferrari won the championship was not quite the dark ages, but it was quite a long time ago, 2007, even though I do remember it quite vividly. So how do they not see that is beyond me. And it's just the whole first half of the season has been schmozzle after schmozzle. Honestly, like 3 races into the season, it's like, great. Looks like they've actually turned things around finally. But then that's kind of when things started falling off the hill. Like, I remember after Melbourne, everyone thought it was Verstappen who had a mountain to climb and it wasn't going to be possible for him. But how it was so different, because it was Leclerc then and Ferrari who ended up having all the troubles afterwards. Like, not taking away the fact that, the Ferrari is a fast car, it's just not a very reliable one. But also, the team have not done any favours strategically on the pit wall, of course. And then, of course, the drivers are not doing any favours either, with Leclerc making mistakes like he did in France. So, there you go. I've had my little Ferrari rant. But anyway, let's move it on now. Behind the McLaren and the Alpine, we had Sebastian Vettel finishing 10th, of course, so Vettel announcing his retirement ahead of the weekend, and I guess, he's just going to be racing for himself now, isn't he, to try and finish ahead. So it was another Stroll versus Vettel dash to the end, and this time it was Seb who came out on top, did the soft, medium, two-stop strategy. Daniel Ricciardo, unfortunately, going backwards on the hard tyre too. He ended up tangling with Lance Stroll too, which saw him cop a 5-second time penalty, so he finished all the way down in 15th. Whilst the only retiree from the race we had was Valtteri Bottas having a loss of power towards the end of the race there, and that brought out a virtual safety car. Other notable things, I guess, Yuki Tsunoda finishing last of the classified runners, and a total of 60 seconds, a whole minute, off the next car up ahead, which was Nicholas Latifi, who was behind his teammate Alex Albon there at the Williams. So, yeah, not a great race for Tsunoda. And AlphaTauri overall have just had a really wretched time. So Pierre Gasly, 12th in this one. And then when you look at the constructors' points, I made I made it worth mentioning the fact that Aston Martin are closing into AlphaTauri now for 7th in the championship. Sorry, not 7th, 8th in the championship. So that would be interesting with 7 points between them if Aston Martin were to jump ahead. And Aston Martin are the guys who I thought were not going to be finishing anywhere higher than where they were this season, or even finishing last. That's what I thought coming into the season when we saw testing and everything unfold. I thought maybe Williams would be ahead of them, but no, Williams quite a while behind now, with 3 points, and then Aston Martin and AlphaTauri fighting over 8th position, it seems. So good on them for that. Ferrari, again, Constructors' Championship-wise, they've got 30 points between them and Mercedes. And Mercedes, their last few races, so is that 5 podiums in a row now for Lewis Hamilton, which is phenomenal. And, great job for them. I think, the whole shifting of their mindset as well this season has come to fruition, rather than lamenting or, ruining the fact that they're not fighting for the championship. They're maximising everything every weekend they can, and as a result, it's paying dividends. And second in the Constructors' Championship will feel like a win for them, given how far behind they were when we started the season, and how quickly they've been able to close up to Ferrari, who were, in some people's eyes, the championship favourites. So it's really good to see for Russell as well to tick off another first with getting a first pole position in his career. Mr. Saturday's back, and just Hamilton's performances have been just things to be in awe of. Basically, it's hard not to be in awe of him, what he's doing still. So it's good to see them a bit more calm and a bit more of a harmonious environment at Mercedes, especially when you consider what happened at the end of last year and coming into this year, the uncertainties around that. Quick mention too, like I would have talked about this earlier if I did an episode, but reading Michael Massey, the ex-F1 race director, reading his first comments since Abu Dhabi last year was also a bit sobering, in the fact that, he was basically fearing for his life and, could see all the death threats that were given to him. It's not on. And I love now F1 has woken up to the things that were going on at the track in Austria with fans. I don't even call them fans, but people harassing other fans and that sort of thing. It's just horrible. And now that they've got mechanisms to call out that sort of behaviour and keep everyone safe, if only there was something for Massey, even if, he did admit to making a mistake. Not that everyone is perfect and they don't make mistakes, but it was very sad. A lot of people don't really care, and I know the kind of people who don't care. They're very come from a different side of the world than we do. I think we're a bit more sympathetic towards Massey because we know how great he was as in his role, not maybe as in the last couple of years. Now I'm losing my words here, but what he did in Australia for CAMS, now Motorsport Australia, going under Charlie Whiting's wings, it was a big thing, for someone from here to go and do that. But it's not like the current race directors are doing getting much support and sympathy from anyone else either. So it's like no matter who was going to step into the role, it was poison chalice. So yeah, but just the whole situation with Massey a bit sad, definitely. So we've got 9 races to go after this once we come back at the end of August for the Belgian Grand Prix. Some exciting races too. Looking forward to, obviously, Spa, Zandvoort, and then Monza. Singapore, Japan, a little bit closer to home, even though Singapore is still on European time. And Japan will be a good one too, even though it clashes with the Bathurst 1000, which I never was a fan of. Thought they would change the dates or at least avoid that clash, but we know where Zach Brown is going to be, the McLaren CEO. He's going to be here at Bathurst as part of his Walkinshaw Andretti United team, which will be good to see. But yeah, silly season stuff, and goodness, it's been pretty silly so far. So we had Vettel announcing his retirement ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix, changes in his priorities in life and whatnot. It's so understandable given what's going on in the world, and he's got a different perspective on things. Doesn't help as well when your team is sponsored by a Saudi Arabian oil giant too, if he's looking at trying to save the world environmental, being a bit more environmentally friendly and all that sort of stuff, and being such a proud ally of the LGBTQI plus community as well. There's a lot of conflict there between certain sponsors and human rights and everything that people deserve to be a part of. But also, when you look at it from a racing, purely performance and racing perspective, where else could Seb have gone apart from staying with the current team he's at, whose trajectory still doesn't look very bright to me in terms of moving up the pecking order anytime soon? But there wouldn't be a logical place for him to go, having been at the dizzying heights of his success at Red Bull and then, winning races at Ferrari, but ultimately failing to capture that dream of trying to emulate his idol in Michael Schumacher to be able to win a championship for Ferrari and break that drought of championships for Ferrari like the great Schumacher did. So, it is sad in a way that Vettel's career kind of ends or will end scoring 9th and 10th place finishes or even just struggling to get into the points. But at the same time, I hope we can celebrate the driver that he was. Like, I'll be the first one to admit that I've had such a love-hate relationship with Vettel, going back to when he first started in F1. Obviously, it was nice seeing a fresh young face on the grid, and it was easy to get behind him, such a likable character. And then, of course, backing it up with those performances, the first win there for Toro Rosso at Monza, then moving to Red Bull 2010, the championship. He was never really the favourite. It was kind of between him and his teammate. Sorry, it was between his teammate Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso, but then come the end of Abu Dhabi, it's Vettel who's won. And then the subsequent years, his ruthlessness, his dominance in 2011 and 2013, 2012 as well, not having the most reliable car, but still managing to win by 3 points over Alonso. It was great. And then, even though his Ferrari career was a sad disappointment, it was good to see him have a crack and to follow his heart to the team that he always wanted to race for when he was younger, watching Schumacher. So, it's just sad that the romanticism about that did not come to fruition. But hopefully, we can remember Seb for the legend he was and is, with his results and his records and everything. Of course, we're still going to remember things like Multi-21, which is what, got me to just kind of get into that hate side. Hate's a strong word, but, a disliking of him, and also seeming to win every single race as well. It does get a bit boring when that happens, but it doesn't take away the respect that, I have and everyone should have of his talent and what he's achieved in the sport. So, I look forward to seeing what he can accomplish outside the sport now in creating a better tomorrow for his family, his children, and children of the world, as he said in that rather moody statement. What that kind of triggered, though, was some very quick movement in filling that vacancy at Aston Martin. It was a bit of a shock when I opened my emails and saw Aston Martin press release saying Fernando Alonso is joining Aston Martin on a long-term deal. I'm like, what? Did I just wake up in a dream or something that I'm seeing this? Like, Alonso? Seriously? And then, the fact that it did happen was like, and the circumstances it happened in as well was quite bizarre. So apparently on the weekend, team principal Otmar Zafnauer for Alpine was certain that, Alonso had not made his mind up about his future and was certain that were going to keep him at Alpine. And then Monday morning in European time, it's like, yep, he's off to Aston Martin. Great. So apparently Alpine too only learnt of Alonso's departure in the press release issued by Aston. So that's pretty much triggered all sorts of chaos around Oscar Piastri as well, and who's going to fill that seat at Alpine. But with Alonso and Aston, it's Alonso seems to be the king of making bad career choices now, while coming back to F1 after a couple of years off, following that disastrous spell at McLaren. Wasn't too bad, and it felt like Alonso had changed his mindset as well about, his expectations, what he wants through being at Alpine, and it just looked, coming into this year that he had progressed, they've progressed as a team and as in a unit, and that they would be getting better and better. So hopefully the next year or the year after, they would be contenders, potentially. Who knows? But it just feels like a slap in the face to Alpine, and that, he believes for whatever reason that Aston Martin are the team that's going to do that, or in the mid to long term, or however much time he's going to commit to them, it's going to pay dividends for him there, which, I really have my doubts with about Aston Martin. I mean, not too long ago was there talk about Lawrence Stroll potentially selling the team, which, that's kind of disappeared because Audi looked more certain to buy out the Alfa Romeo Sauber team, or take majority shareholding of the Sauber group. So, that's not going to happen. But seriously, it's such a strange move. I don't know. As much as I want to be proven wrong, I just have that feeling that it's not going to work out for Alonso, and then he's going to throw the toys out of the cot and off he goes. Especially considering how much of a personality, big personality he is. And then you've got Lawrence Stroll, who's a big personality as well. I don't think Stroll would be the kind of person who would take lightly to criticism from his own drivers about the car. Obviously, you've got his son in the car who's not going to say anything. He just, lucky to be on the grid in the first place. But, having someone like Alonso, if he doesn't like what's going on, he's going to say something about it, like we heard at McLaren all those times. So it's going to be an interesting one there. What it's done to Alpine, though, is even worse, because everyone who's been following Oscar Piastri's, movements over the past couple of months would have been hearing the fact that his contract that he has with Alpine as an Alpine reserve driver and everything had a date, or, it was like a deadline, either the end of July or start of August, one of the two, for whether, if nothing had been agreed with the team, with Alpine, by that deadline, that he was free to look elsewhere. So that seems to have lapsed. Obviously, it's the 4th of August or whatever, and Alonso made his announcement on the 1st of August. Seemingly, the contract had lapsed. Piastri's management, headed up by none other than Mark Webber, of course, has possibly found him a seat at McLaren to replace Daniel Ricciardo next year. Not that McLaren have made any announcement or any indications about that just yet, but Alpine putting out a press release saying that, Piastri's going to drive for us in 2023. It's been confirmed. They had no quotes from Piastri himself, and this led to Oscar coming out on social media saying that, no, I will not be driving for Alpine in 2023. They did not get my permission to put out that press release and all that sort of stuff, and it's basically going to turn into a legal drama now, because he probably has contracts with both teams. So even though we haven't had anything said about McLaren yet, but he might already have a contract with McLaren for next year. Then Alpine will say, well, we've got a contract with you. We don't know fully what those deadline mechanisms were and whatnot, but it's kind of, people said, it's reminiscent of what happened with Jenson Button between BAR and Williams, and he was going to go to Williams, but then BAR took up a option on his contract, and they took it to the contract recognitions board, the CRB, and they found that he had to fulfill his contract at BAR, which meant he had to stay there for another season, unlike with all the acrimony and all that. And that's not something that young Piastri would like, I'm sure, to make his debut in F1, but, driving for a team he doesn't want to. So it's a bit of a situation, of course. But then this is not the first time it's happened to McLaren this season too, because a couple of weeks ago they announced that they are getting reigning IndyCar champion Alex Palou over. Where are they going to put him? Who knows? Because they've already signed Alexander Rossi, Felix Rosenqvist, Pato Award, and then another driver. Even though we believe Rosenqvist is going to head to the Formula E program next year, so there's so many drivers that they've got. The potential of one of them coming into F1. There's only one seat, technically there's not even a seat available at McLaren because Ricciardo is contracted there for another season. But it's the situation with Alpine, which is even more annoying and kind of hilarious, to the fact that, it almost seems like no one wants that seat, to be honest. Alonso's decided to bail on them. He made his decision sooner, maybe, Alpine could have had Piastri without this contract fiasco as well, and that's another thing, because under all accounts and under all rumours and whatnot, it sounded likely that Alonso was going to stay put at Alpine for next year, or even sign a new multi-year agreement with the option of transitioning to their new sports car team that's going to head up, I think, LMDH or LMH, whatever, the Le Mans prototype. No, the hypercar project or whatever it is, sorry. But that's not going to happen now. So, who wants that Alpine seat? I mean, the way this could be resolved in my mind is that, they let Piastri go, and they take back Ricciardo. That might be something, of course. So I wouldn't mind seeing that, even though Alpine, Renault, they were the team that Ricciardo left originally back in 2020 to come to McLaren. Still think that wasn't the right decision for him as well, given how, that's the thing. Alpine are slowly improving. They're slowly becoming a bit more consistent team, but then their drivers just decide they don't want to drive for them anymore. And Alpine are doing better than McLaren this year. But then again, that is thanks to one of their drivers not really putting in the performances when they are in a good position. So, of course, Ricciardo starting in the top 10 this time, goes backwards in the race, ends up hitting Stroll, etc. So, it's all a bit of a schmozzle at the moment. Don't know how it's all going to pan out. No news today, of course, apart from Alex Albon being a bit of a troll and saying in his little press release of that he's staying at Williams for a multi-year deal, that, he did get the teams, he did agree with the team to issue this press release, what's their names, that Oscar Piastri put out, saying that they did not get his permission to, the team did not get his permission to do that. So that's quite funny the way he did that. But what do you say? Hopefully it all works out, and next time I come to record, I can actually talk about teams settling down or drivers settling down at teams, and looking forward to seeing how the rest of the year pans out on track. Rounding it out then with some supercars as well, talking points from the Bend SuperSprint. Decent weekend. Same results, Shane Van Gisbergen swept the weekend, actually. Takes another 300 points in the bag. He's got quite a big lead now in the championship with more than a round's worth of points ahead of Anton De Pasquale. I think the biggest talking point for me out of the weekend was the wildcard entry in Zach Best taking pole for race 21. It was a shock pole. And quite exciting too, because you don't see normally a rookie wild card especially, come out and take a pole position like that. What I got a bit fired up over was the controversy that was created around that. The fact that someone or a particular team caused a stir in the paddock, saying, "Hey, the wildcard entries, because there was two in the form of Best and Jordan Boys with Image Racing, that, they've got different tyres than we do, even though they're all soft compound tyres from Dunlop. Apparently the tyre sets that the wildcards had were manufactured on a different date to the tyres that the rest of the field had." Did that make a big difference? Who knows? It's totally discounting the fact that, the driver had an impact on that lap, or the fact that, the Mustang does work pretty well normally around the bend. It suited the high downforce kind of setup, or the layout or nature of the track is suited to the Mustang, which is still very aero proficient. But no, someone just had to come and spoil the party, of course. And not that it made any difference to the race anyway, because SVG won ahead of Will Davison, who, started further down, was able to come back up the field. Gisbergen doing a long first stint and had enough of a margin to pit and come out in the lead, and Chaz Mostert finishing in third. It's exciting, but it's almost becoming predictable in a sense. Sunday we had 2 pole positions for Cam Waters as well. So again, the Mustang and the Tickford Mustangs especially being quite quick around this track. So, let's sharpen the pitchforks and blame the tyres for the wildcard getting pole position. What's the point of even having wildcards then, if they're just meant to hang around the back of the grid and make up the numbers? Or even a Super 2 program, as a matter of fact. What's the point of doing junior racing if only 2 or 3 teams and maybe 4 drivers realistically have had a chance to win races in a season, but then not even consistently, because then there's only one person who wins the championship. I'm not saying that this is anything against a particular driver or anything. I love Van Gisbergen and good on him for the performances he's putting in. But, just the way it's all happening with supercars is a bit, it's just a bit predictable and a bit boring. It's just and then not giving the young guy a chance to put his performance in and be at the front of the grid. It's it's the tyres' fault. So what we're going to do is mix all the compounds for Sunday, just so that everyone has a fair go. Fair go would be if, you just left it as is. I'm sure there was no big differential between, the manufacturing dates, and, if they're all the same compound of tyre, they should always be the same, no matter when they're manufactured. Seriously. Anyway, so we had a start line smash on Sunday, race 22. So Thomas Randall, another Tickford car, gets his first front row started P2. Another Tickford car up there in qualifying. Let's change his tyres, why not? He unfortunately stalled it from second on the grid and couldn't get the car going. The whole field did so well to avoid him. Unfortunately, Andre Heimgartner did not, and was basically ripped off the entire front end of his car, sent Randall into a spin, and caught Nick Percat as well. There was a red flag, of course, before Van Gisbergen came back to win that race, which has Mostert coming up 4 places, and James Courtney getting a third as well in the Tickford car. Glad to see that everyone was fine after that. They did have to take Heimgartner to the hospital for some precautionary checks and whatnot, but he was good. So was Randall. Unfortunately, their car's not, and I think with the Brad Jones car for Heimgartner especially, that chassis has been said goodbye to, because I don't think they can rescue it, so they'll be pulling out an old chassis, I think. The one that Tim Slade won back-to-back at Winton with a few years ago for the next race here at Sandown. And it was good, actually, because they got Percat's car back up and running, did Walkinshaw Andretti United for race 23. And I guess having that rain come and affect it as well would have got them would have made them a lot more nervous. They didn't want any more incidents, but finishing in the top 10 was a good result for them, considering what had happened in the previous race. There was a bit of a battle between Van Gisbergen and Waters in that race, which was good to see, but at the end of the day, the Red Bull won. He was able to extend his lead. I think he finished like 8 seconds ahead of Waters in that one at the end of it, and then Brody Kostecki coming up 10 positions to finish on the podium on the same weekend that Erebus announced that both drivers would be retained for the next couple of seasons until the end of 2024, which is really good to see, because Will Brown and Brody Kostecki, they're doing a great job. Couple of young chargers. And Erebus are a team, who next year I feel like they'll benefit from the fact that Walkinshaw Andretti United go over to the Ford Mustang. So it essentially puts the onus on Erebus to be the second best GM team, which I totally think that they're capable of doing. And they're just, everyone's favourite it's everyone's second favourite team up there when it comes to favourite teams. What Van Gisbergen's dominance this weekend has done as well as given Holden the manufacturer's title, of course. So he's had 14 wins this season. There's been a few wins for Chaz Mostert as well, driving in the Commodore. So Holden taking a 17th manufacturer's title. It's final year, of course, with the Commodore chassis, of course, before they switch to the Camaro next season. So a nice way for Holden to see out the end of their tenure in supercars with that win. So and that's pretty much it, guys, for this first half of 2022 for Formula One. Supercars, of course, in a couple of weeks at Sandown, but I'm not likely going to be doing any recording. I will be away for a while now. I think I'll be back the same weekend the Belgian Grand Prix will be on, so perhaps I'll do a little preview and mid-season review episode then. No guarantees at all. I just need this time to be with family and with my partner. It's already been a pretty hard year mentally, but this what has happened, losing her dad and everything has just made it a lot worse. So we need that time, and everything else kind of takes a back seat. It's more about caring for your loved ones and your friends, family, and everything else can take a back seat. We can argue for hours and days, all the people who rip into each other on social media over things, like the whole Massey thing as well. Like, seriously, get over yourselves, guys. There's worse things going on in the world and whatnot, but we're still going to bang on a guy who is receiving death threats and, fearing for his life because of what happened there at the end of last year. So anyway, move it on. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you. I'll see you when I see you. Well, you won't see me, but you'll hear me when you hear me. Thanks, guys.